to do Secret Wars justice. Ladies and gentlemen, as proof of the unimaginable possibilities in the Marvel multi-universe, we give you the one person who could play Victor Von Doom.
New mask. Same task. What can I tell you? I like playing complicated characters.
What is going on? What is going on?
What the fuck? This whole thing is beyond baffling. I mean, it's just so confounding that you're left questioning the sanity of humanity as a result of this decision. I mean, y'all already know how I felt about Hugh Jackman coming back for Deadpool and Wolverine, and how I thought that was a horrible idea. You know, I went on a rant for like 2 years about it, and whatever. Saw the movie, and you know what? I still don't like the idea, but you know, at least I was able to kind of see what they were trying to do there. But this decision reeks of absolute desperation by comparison. Why would the MCU completely blow their legacy currency on this? And as an inaugural Doctor Doom in this franchise, you pick variant Tony Stark? Like, I knew you were desperate, but I didn't know how desperate. Needless to say, I think it's very apparent that Marvel is making safe decisions over smart decisions. And if you want to avoid making the same mistakes Marvel does and use that big brain of yours, a great way to do that is with Brilliant. You've probably heard me talk about Brilliant before on the channel, and for good reason. I love them. They're one of my favorite platforms out there, specifically one of my favorite platforms for learning new skills, because it's designed to be uniquely effective for each individual that uses it. And while Brilliant might not have a course on how to manage your fledgling monarchy, they do have insanely useful ones like programming, where you can get familiar with Python, or how LLMs work, where you can learn, you guessed it, how LLMs work. And if your first thoughts were, what the hell is an LLM? Or why are snakes so important for coding? Don't worry, because each course welcomes learners at every level and teaches you the specified skill set in a way that's both engaging and interactive, to keep you interested and immersed in the material. Basically, you're actually going to learn the things that you want to learn, and that's what it's all about, folks. Their first principles approach helps you build an understanding of the material from the ground up by filling every lesson with hands-on problem solving. Brilliant helps you not only to learn, but retain concepts by building your critical thinking skills through problem solving, not memorizing. So while you're building real knowledge on specific topics, you're also strengthening your brain in general. And each lesson is designed to fit into any schedule, so you can ease yourself into habitual learning for even just a few minutes a day. Right now, you can try Brilliant for free for a full 30 days by visiting brilliant.org/FilmSpeak, or click the link in the description of this video to give learning a trial run, as well as receive 20% off an annual premium subscription. That's brilliant.org/FilmSpeak, or click the link in the description below and receive 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thank you so much to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. Robert Downey Jr., my guy, my buddy, my friend, what? You just won an Oscar. Have some goddamn integrity, for God's sake. Go work on some passion this is gonna be a hot one, guys. We began this phase of the MCU with No Way Home, a Raimi trilogy wankfest, if you will. We just got Deadpool and Wolverine, a Fox Marvel movie wankfest. And now we've reached the apex here, folks, which is the MCU having a wankfest over itself. And that's gonna be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It stopped being cute a while ago, and now it's beyond cynical. At least I get that a big driving force behind Deadpool and Wolverine is that it's a movie about a big business that amounts to a whole apology tour for not putting Logan in the costume during Hugh's original run. It's still a cash grab and not really what I would choose to do with that, but I at least see some glimmer of logic behind it. Whereas here, what is the angle? Why would you bring Robert Downey Jr. back? It feels like a massive mistake. And you know what? Marvel is still going to double dip on the whole legacy thing by bringing him back again as proper Tony Stark in Secret Wars or whatever the fuck. And quite frankly, most people are gonna be sick of it. Again, you can do this thing one time, but you start doing over and over again, and then people are just like, are these even movies anymore? You're gonna lose the regulars, the people that you were trying to reach back when you started this whole universe in 2008. And the only people that you're going to be appealing to are the hardcore people who will watch anything that you put out and be happy with it. You're losing your mainstream appeal, which is an insane thing to say, but like, it's true. And on top of that, how many times do we have to do movies about the legacy of Tony Stark? Like, I'm just sick of it. All of the Tom Holland Spider-Man films are about this. Even Mysterio in Far From Home exists vicariously as an extension of Stark's legacy. And now we have what is essentially evil Tony Stark, a la Doctor Doom, as a lead villain for the Avengers. The funny thing is, post Iron Man 3, Tony's practically been the largest villain in the MCU because of his guilt complex, so it's not like Tony being an antagonist is anything new either. You know, I understand now why the MCU struggled to find directors for Avengers 5 and 6. No one, and I mean no one, not even Sean Levy, who just delivered Marvel's biggest success in I mean, well, even more than that, he just delivered one of the highest grossing films of all time at this point. He didn't even want to be responsible for this nightmare. It feels like the Russos were the only ones willing to do this because, like, what reputation do they have left at this point? They've already kind of, like, thrown their name in the gutter on these weird projects they've decided to do and kind of proved that outside of the Marvel machine, they're not really it. This only appeals, in my opinion, to the lowest common denominator of fandom. The soups of the world, if you will. The people that treat their movies like sports and equate Robert Downey Jr. coming back as Iron Man to Michael Jordan coming out of retirement to lead the Bulls to 3 consecutive championships. I'm sorry, but that's not the same. That's not what movies, art is, and if that's what you want to get out of going to the movies, I don't really know what to say to you. You probably don't like movies, to be honest. Then there's the whole other play it out idea of inserting Tony Stark into another comic book character with no relation to Tony Stark like they did with Age of Ultron, only 50 times more egregious. It's just, why are you picking the weirdest things to take creative liberties with and the weirdest things to be slavish to the comics with? Just do Doctor Doom like he was in the comics, which incidentally would have been a first. It's even more confounding when there's a genuine, sincere, reverent attempt to adapt the Fantastic Four, to make them comic accurate, which, by the way, that film looks fucking great. Why would you not do the same for their primary villain? I've seen some people compare this to the Mandarin twist in Iron Man 3, which, no, it's not the same, but whatever. Comic Mandarin is a racist caricature of a character that's antiquated and just flat out sucks. He's not all that interesting like Victor Von Doom is. If you want to take massive liberties with C-list villains for an Iron Man film, go for it. No regular person gives a fuck. By changing it up, you stumble into something interesting, which is why it works in Iron Man 3, in my opinion. I guess that's kind of controversial, but regardless. But sometimes you just gotta let the characters, especially the big ones, be. You can take liberties with adaptations, and you should, but this goes far beyond that and speaks to something more cynical and desperate. When you remove all the elements that make a character a character, it no longer becomes an adaptation of the character and instead just becomes a different character altogether. So, like, why would you call him Dr. Doom at that point other than to capitalize on the name? Doom is such a fucking interesting character too. He's not just the Fantastic Four's primary antagonist, he's one of the greatest all-time villains in all of comics, nay, all of fiction. He's someone you'd want to mine the comics for and properly adapt. It's also so weird to me that in making Doom an Avengers villain played by Robert Downey Jr., the Fantastic Four's main antagonist, this incredible character with such rich history and complexities, is someone everyone else in this universe will have more of a relationship with than them. Like, Thor will have more of a connection to Dr. Doom than Reed. Really? The most annoying thing about this is Downey literally does not need to be Dr. Doom. It makes no sense. You just immediately went back to the well, to the previous era for a cheap nostalgia grab when the going got tough, instead of actually fucking trying. It was reported by Collider that Doom will appear in the Fantastic Four movie, and that makes sense if you want to establish that relationship, but because of the Robert Downey Jr. element, he'll now kind of overshadow those characters in their inaugural movie. Either way you slice it, it just sucks. The Fantastic Four can't even be launched without Robert Downey Jr. in the mix, just like Spider-Man. These are characters that have traditionally stood confidently and strongly on their own. These are your fucking A-listers, the first family of Marvel Comics. So let them be these icons, let them stand on their own, and let Doom stand on his own, especially considering they've never really gotten the character right in live action. This was their shot, and they're just throwing it away. Come on, guys. Like, I've seen a lot of armchair comic book experts say that this decision is justified because of the infamous Iron Man arc, but outside of the comic covers and iconography, that and Dr. Doom couldn't be further from each other. I chatted in depth with a couple of good friends of mine that are comic experts, and I think they put it best. Robert Downey Jr. playing Victor Von Doom isn't anything like The Maker, Superior Iron Man, 6160 Reed, or Infamous Iron Man, which you'd know if you read any comics featuring these characters. This isn't some deep-cut adaptation, it's just Marvel being lazy with their cast. It's annoying when the people speaking the loudest aren't actually knowledgeable on the subject. Could Robert Downey Jr. be a good Doom? Sure, but he's only playing Doom because of his name value and the Marvel higher-ups wanting to bring lapsed fans back to the MCU. It's not birthed out of inspiration from the source material. So, you know what? Let's dive into this idea of, oh, well, it's adapting this arc a bit. For those of you that don't know, Infamous Iron Man takes place after Secret Wars. In it, Doom, who was the big bad in Secret Wars and someone we followed for about 60 years in the comics, tries to atone for his sins and starts helping out Tony Stark, since they're both geniuses and into tech and all that shit. Then Tony is killed in Civil War II, and Victor decides to step in as Iron Man to honor him and try to repair his own reputation. It's clear the MCU is trying to do the inverse of that, but it's simply far less effective. Infamous Iron Man works because it's Victor taking up the mantle of Iron Man after Tony's death, and having been a regular part of the Iron Man comics for the previous year and developed a friendship with him. It also builds off Doom's second chance at the end of Secret Wars, where Reed repairs his face when he rebuilds the universe. It's not about variants or alternate universes, multiversal shit. It's a story about a man who's done a lot of bad things seeking to prove he is a good person and honor the legacy of two better men who believed in him. The similarities begin and end with Doom looks like Iron Man. Infamous Iron Man is a really cool story, and it's a fun reinvention of Doom's character, but it only works after seeing Victor as a villain. But also, Infamous Iron Man spends a lot of time on Doom's backstory, his relationship with his mother and his Romani heritage, which, seemingly won't be a factor in this interpretation of the character, which is beyond disgraceful, but, that's a whole other issue. Talk about erasing an integral part of the character's backstory, like, ew. The story works because it builds off of that history and Hickman's deconstruction of Victor. This is all symptomatic of a much larger issue, which is the MCU rushing to adapt Secret Wars without laying the groundwork in which Doom is an essential part. Look, it sucks that the Kang thing didn't work out, but that doesn't mean you can immediately pivot to this weird take on the Doom character. You can't deconstruct the character if he doesn't mean anything in the MCU to begin with, which I'm sure is why they cast Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, but then it begs the question as to why try to do Doom this way to begin with? If you want to have evil Iron Man, do evil Iron Man. I still wouldn't love it, but it would make sense and be an interesting way to close off this whole multiversal thing by looking inward at Marvel's own legacy. Maybe that's less sexy than Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, but if that's more or less what you're going to do, then why ruin the first appearance of the Marvel villain this way? On a similar note, I've also seen a lot of people posting panels from Secret Wars of Dr. Doom ripping Thanos' spine from his body and going, "Can't wait to see Robert Downey Jr. do this as Doom," and it's beyond frustrating because, again, these so-called fans don't know the first thing about these comics and what makes an image powerful and strong. I mean, this is really a much larger thing because they seemingly don't understand that a cool image has to have weight in order for it to mean something and be, well, cool. This isn't anything new, but this is probably the most egregious example of that. I think writer-journalist Ewan Patterson made an excellent point when he said, gagging at the thought of Kevin Feige stumbling across infamous Iron Man and looking straight over Doom's redemptive arc to hit the bring back RDJ button. And yeah, I know all of this is superheroes and none of it matters, but like Hickman pulled off something incredible within that space, and it's frankly embarrassing that both the hardcore audience and Marvel itself are incapable of processing the imagery beyond toy articulation. And yes, RDJ's casting is incompatible with all of this. Masks and makeup cannot extricate him from the context of what came before, which is precisely Marvel's intent. Another issue with all of this is the Avengers. Who the fuck is even the core cast of characters of this universe anymore? And I'm not just saying that to say it, I think it's actually kind of symptomatic of, again, a much larger issue. Marvel has failed to establish anyone new other than, Shang-Chi, really, which, again, baffling they didn't announce a Shang-Chi too. Like, you'd think you would capitalize on that film. Ugh. That's a conversation for a later point in time. This feels indicative of a larger symptomatic issue in Hollywood. Studios have just gotten lazy. They're spending so much time being nostalgic for the past, romanticizing legacy franchises, that they forgot to innovate and make new ones. This is exactly what's happening to the MCU on a smaller scale now. They didn't invest in properly setting up the future and so have no choice but to look to the past and capitalize on the nostalgia well. The fact that people are talking more about Spider-Man's relationship to Dr. Doom and his gee shucks gasp reaction to seeing it's a variant of Tony Stark more than his relationship with Reed Richards is sad and pathetic. And even if it is just a variant of Tony Stark as Doom or a temporary Doom who won't survive after Secret Wars, I still think casting Robert Downey Jr. is pretty lame, considering we've never actually gotten a Doom who comes anywhere close to the greatness of the comics. While I like Julian McMahon's Dr. Doom, it's not really that faithful. I mean, it's clearly riffing on Norman Osborn given the success of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films at the time. And obviously, Van Forstic is a horrendous interpretation of Dr. Doom. I was genuinely excited to see a fresh, definitive take on this character, a more tried, true, traditional character where we could pull from his Latvarian roots, really establish him from the ground up like what they seem to be doing with the Fantastic Four, but they aren't doing that. At the very least, this could have been an evil multiversal Tony Stark without the Doom element, and I would have at least respected that more. Simply bring back Robert Downey Jr. as Superior Iron Man, an evil version of the character we love, just sub him out for Kang, and you get the same effect. The greatest mind in the multiverse is its savior and greatest threat. The general audience would gravitate to that way more than Dr. Doom. Again, I'm not a comic purist by any means, but sometimes you gotta just let the characters be the characters. Let us know who Doctor Doom is, let new fans get acquainted with him and understand why he's one of the most fascinating characters in Marvel Comics and the ultimate baddie. Explore his relationship with Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four that is so rich to mine. You don't need nostalgia in order to make that work. It's right there on the page. And it robs these new characters and emerging ones of any potential to succeed. Look what happened with MCU Spidey. He wasn't allowed to grow because he was stuck under the shadow of Tony Stark. It feels like the same will not only be true for the Fantastic Four, but the entirety of the MCU as a whole in Phase 6. It's a damn shame because it truly felt like they were headed in the right direction watching that San Diego Comic-Con panel. Doom was exactly who they should have had in lieu of Kang in the first place, especially with Secret Wars on the horizon. But then you go and completely squander it and give it unnecessary baggage by casting Robert Downey Jr. as the character. This truly feels like the end for the MCU. To put it simply, some ideas are just stupid, and they get even dumber the more you think about it. It's literally the Benoit Blanc thing from Glass Onion.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.
I mean, what's next? Chris Evans as Magneto, Scarlett Johansson as Mystique, Paul Rudd as Charles Xavier? Like, be so fucking for real, dude. This is just embarrassing. You fumble the excitement of a bright future, introducing Doctor Doom, and within seconds, suck all of that oxygen out of the room by completely selling out to go back to the well. Again, it's similar to how I felt bringing Hugh Jackman back, and now that would defile Logan's grave, but like, it's not even in the same category. This is just definitively a bad idea, in my opinion. Like, this is so much worse. It's a far more egregious decision that proves once and for all that Marvel is creatively bankrupt, completely out of ideas, and is willing to undo their perfect ending in Endgame and for Tony Stark because they're so horribly stuck. Some people are defending this as a wild swing, this idea of how just because it's novel, you have to give it a chance. First of all, what the fuck is novel about bringing back a beloved iconic actor to a franchise? They're just doing it in a more confoundingly stupid way. But second of all, no. I'm sorry, no. Sometimes things just don't pass the sniff test. Like this notion that you can make any idea work, that it can be interesting. I'm just fucking over it. Like, enough throwing shit at the wall. It's good to have a no-holds-barred creative confab in a writer's room where the most outlandish, absurd ideas are tossed around. Like, that's very healthy for creativity. It gets the juices flowing and it gets people out of their comfort zones to think outside the box. There should be no barriers when you're trying to ideate and come up with stuff. Anyone who's ever had creative chats knows what that experience is like, and knows that one guy who just blurts out the dumbest thing like, dude, it would be so crazy? What if we did Doctor Doom, but he's Tony Stark played by Robert Downey Jr.? And everyone just kind of laughs, they nod along, they're like, oh, that's a funny gag and whatever. Like, no one takes it seriously, nor should they, but it's a great prompter. I mean, it's silly, but like, you don't actually fucking go with that idea. Like it's just... sometimes things are just bad ideas, folks. Like, sometimes it's just, there's no defending it. Like, there are no bad ideas, ass writer room. Jesus. Fuck, man. They're just making movies for Blu-ray Angel. Who hired him as the screenwriter of this?